Ma'am, we're not here to debate who owns the marina. We're here to enforce a court order. That was the sentence that finally stopped Rebecca Langford. For maybe 3 seconds. It was 6:12 on a Thursday morning, and Blackwater Lake looked like somebody had covered it with smoke. Thin fog drifted between the docks. The air smelled of wet pine, gasoline, and diesel exhaust from 3 sheriff's SUVs parked across the entrance to Cedar Crown Marina. Blue lights rolled silently over polished boats and aluminum railings. Nobody was being arrested. Nobody needed to be. The paperwork was doing enough damage by itself. Rebecca stood 10 feet from the lead deputy in a pink business suit over a white blouse, black heels clicking against damp pavement. She looked dressed for a board meeting, not a marina before sunrise. Her blonde hair was perfect. Her expression wasn't. "This is private Silver Pines property," she said. "You cannot block our members from accessing a $3 million facility." The deputy held the folded order at his side. "You'll need to discuss the property dispute with your attorney. I am the HOA president." "I understand." Rebecca clearly wasn't accustomed to hearing those words followed by nothing. Behind her, a pickup towing a base boat had stopped at the entrance. Another truck waited behind it. Drivers were climbing out, phones already in their hands. I stood near my pickup on the opposite side of the gravel lot with a paper cup of coffee warming my fingers. My name is Grant Holloway. I was 46 years old. And 6 weeks earlier, I had never met Rebecca Langford. I hadn't attended a Silver Pines board meeting. I hadn't received an HOA violation. I didn't even know Cedar Crown Marina existed. All I had done was buy 8,000 acres of ranchland outside their HOA. Rebecca saw me. Her entire face changed. First recognition, then anger, then something smaller. Fear, maybe. She pointed at me. Him. Every head turned. "That man has been interfering with our access for weeks. He chained our road. He threatened our contractors. He's trying to take control of HOA property." I took a sip of coffee. The deputy glanced at the paperwork in his hand. "Grant Holloway? That's me." Rebecca gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "There. Talk to him. Better yet, remove him." The deputy walked toward me instead. Rebecca stopped smiling. His boots made a slow grinding sound over the gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. When he reached me, he lowered his voice. "Mr. Holloway, you brought the certified survey?" "In the truck." "And the deed package?" "Same case." He nodded. Behind him, Rebecca stared at us. "What survey?" Nobody answered immediately. That silence did more than an argument could have. A loose dock line slapped against an aluminum post. Clack, clack, clack. Somewhere near the fuel station, a pump clicked as it cooled in the morning air. Rebecca stepped closer. "What survey?" I looked past her toward Cedar Crown. 37 boat slips. Fuel pumps. A clubhouse. A paved parking area. Boat storage. Landscaping. Security cameras. Silver Pines had insured the facility for nearly $3 million. For more than 2 decades, people had driven through those gates believing the same thing Rebecca believed, that the HOA owned it. Then I looked down at the pavement near parking space 17. Beneath the gravel beside that asphalt was a rusted iron pin no wider than my thumb. It had been there longer than Cedar Crown, longer than Silver Pines, longer than Rebecca's black HOA binder and every rule she had ever quoted from it. I had nearly walked past another one on the first afternoon I owned Blackwater Ridge. That tiny piece of steel had eventually forced everyone to ask a question nobody at Silver Pines had apparently bothered to ask in 23 years. Where, exactly, did their property end? Rebecca followed my eyes toward the parking lot. For the first time that morning, she didn't look angry. She looked uncertain. And that was when I knew she remembered the same thing I did. 6 weeks earlier. A dirt road. Fresh tire tracks. A faded survey ribbon. And an HOA sign standing on land where no HOA was supposed to exist. That was where this really started. 6 weeks earlier, Blackwater Ridge introduced itself with a set of tire tracks that weren't mine. I noticed them about 90 minutes after I got the keys. The afternoon sun hung low over the western ridge, turning 8,000 acres of pasture and pine into long bands of golden shadow. My pickup crawled along an old ranch road while dry grass brushed the doors. The windows were down. Cicadas screamed from the trees. The air smelled like warm cedar, dust, and sun-baked earth. Exactly what I had paid for. Blackwater Ridge wasn't part of Silver Pines. That mattered. Before closing, I had paid a property attorney to review the title documents. I had studied the survey myself. No HOA membership. No Silver Pines covenants. No architectural committee. No monthly dues. After 22 years managing construction projects, I wanted land where nobody could send me a letter about the color of my barn. Then I saw the tracks. Fresh. Deep. Too wide for an ATV. They crossed the ranch road and disappeared through grass along the eastern timberline. I stopped. Killed the engine. For several seconds, all I heard was the ticking of hot metal beneath the hood. Then something else reached me. A boat engine. I looked east. The lake was somewhere beyond those trees, but according to my map, I still had a long stretch of property between the road and the shoreline. I climbed out. The tracks led downhill. Branches scraped my shoulders as I followed them through the pines. About 50 yards in, something orange caught my eye. Faded survey ribbon. It hung from an oak beside a rusted iron pin barely protruding above the soil. I crouched, brushed away pine needles. The steel was old enough that its surface flaked beneath my thumb. I pulled out my phone and photographed it. Click. Then I checked my survey. The location looked right. An original boundary monument. I almost kept walking without giving it another thought. Almost. The boat engine grew louder. Then came another smell. Gasoline. Not a gas can. Fuel pumps. I followed the tire tracks another 100 yards until the woods suddenly opened. I stopped dead. Below me was a marina. Not some weathered fishing dock with 6 slips. A real facility. Rows of boats rocked against white bumpers. Aluminum docks stretched into Blackwater Lake. A fuel station sat beside a wide concrete ramp. Beyond it stood a clubhouse with blue metal roofing and a paved parking lot full of trucks and trailers. Music drifted across the water. Someone laughed. An ice machine hummed beside the clubhouse. For a moment, I assumed I had crossed the property line. I checked my phone, then the paper survey, then my phone again. I hadn't. That was when I saw the sign. It stood beside the dirt access road about 20 yards ahead. Silver Pines Lake Community. Cedar Crown Marina. Private HOA property. Members only. I read it twice. Then I looked behind me at the tire tracks running through Blackwater Ridge. Something didn't fit. A maintenance truck climbed the road from the marina. White pickup. Silver Pines logo on the door. The driver slowed when he saw me. His window came down. You need help? I'm trying to figure out why this road crosses my ranch. He frowned. Your ranch. Blackwater Ridge. His expression changed immediately. Not fear. Recognition. Like he had been expecting that name eventually. You're the guy who bought it. Yesterday. He glanced toward the marina. Then toward the survey in my hand. You should probably talk to Rebecca. Rebecca who? Before he could answer, the sound of tires came from behind me. Fast. Gravel snapped beneath them. A white SUV appeared between the trees and rolled toward us through a cloud of dust. The maintenance driver looked relieved. That's her. The SUV stopped beside the HOA sign. The door opened. A white woman in a pink business suit stepped onto my dirt road, black heels landing where the fresh tire tracks crossed my property. She adjusted her jacket, looked at me, then at the survey in my hand. Her smile arrived a second later. Controlled. Professional. Certain. You must be Grant Holloway. I folded the survey. And you must be Rebecca. She glanced toward Cedar Crown Marina as though everything behind her belonged exactly where it stood. Then she looked back at me. We should talk about your obligations to Silver Pines. I had owned Blackwater Ridge for less than 2 hours. And somehow, I already had obligations to an HOA I had never joined. Rebecca Langford didn't introduce herself with a handshake. She introduced herself with an invoice. $18,400. I looked at the paper she had just pulled from her black leather binder. Then at her. For what? Rebecca stood beside the Silver Pines sign in that pink business suit, white blouse bright against the dusty road, black heels planted on ground I had owned for less than 2 hours. Lake Infrastructure Assessment. She said it like she was telling me the temperature. Rebecca opened the binder again. Plastic sleeves whispered beneath her fingers. Silver Pines maintains the access corridor, shoreline infrastructure, security, and Cedar Crown facilities. Blackwater Ridge has historically benefited from those services. I bought a ranch. Yes. Outside your HOA. Her smile tightened. Your residence is technically outside the subdivision. Technically. That word told me more about Rebecca than the invoice did. My residence isn't what I asked about. She handed me another sheet. Annual access maintenance, $600. Below it were rules governing fences, shoreline improvements, vegetation removal, construction materials, vehicle access, and architectural approval. I stopped reading. None of this applies to me. Everyone around Blackwater Lake participates. That wasn't what I said. The maintenance driver suddenly found something interesting inside his truck. Rebecca closed the binder. The soft slap of leather sounded strangely final. Mr. Holloway, Silver Pines has maintained this arrangement for more than 20 years. Then 20 years should have produced something with my signature on it. For the first time, her smile disappeared. She glanced toward the marina. You're new here. I noticed. There's no reason to begin your relationship with this community by creating conflict. I looked down at her black heels. They were standing in the fresh tire tracks that had crossed my property. Rebecca, I didn't bring the conflict. She left 8 minutes later. 2 days after that, the first certified letter arrived. Notice of interference with established community access. I hadn't interfered with anything. The next letter accused me of unauthorized alterations because I had repaired 30 feet of old ranch fencing. Then Silver Pines security started appearing. The first guard drove a golf cart past my equipment shed at 7:20 on a Tuesday morning. I stepped outside. You lost. Routine perimeter patrol. This is Blackwater Ridge. I know. Then your perimeter is about a mile east. He left. The boat trailers didn't. By Saturday, 7 had crossed the ranch road. One driver crushed a drainage culvert shoulder. Another tossed an empty beer can into my pasture. That afternoon, I installed a steel chain across the access road. 2 posts. Reflective markers. Private property sign. Heavy padlock. Nothing hidden. Nothing dangerous. Just a boundary. At 6:03 the next morning, I walked down with coffee. The chain was in the grass. The padlock lay beside it. Cut clean through. The exposed steel inside the shackle was bright silver against the rust-colored dirt. I picked it up. Still cold. For a moment, I just stood there listening. Birds. Wind in the pines. A boat starting somewhere beyond the trees. Then I remembered the trail camera. I had mounted it on an oak 30 yards back after seeing the first tire tracks. I pulled the memory card and walked to my truck. For 36 a.m., empty road. For 38, headlights. A white Silver Pines maintenance truck entered the frame. 2 men climbed out. One carried bolt cutters. I watched the clip once. Then again. The second time, I noticed the passenger pointing directly at my private property sign before the other man cut the lock. My phone rang. Rebecca. Perfect timing. I answered. Morning. Her voice was smooth. Grant, I understand there was another misunderstanding at the access road. I looked at the frozen image on my laptop. Silver Pines logo. Timestamp. Bolt cutters. Misunderstanding. The association cannot allow individual owners to obstruct established access. You cut my lock. A pause. I suggest you speak with counsel before making accusations. That sentence almost made me smile. Good idea. Rebecca went quiet. I closed the laptop. Because she was right. I didn't need a lawyer. What I didn't know yet was that Silver Pines had 23 years of documents supporting its use of that road. And before I could beat Rebecca Langford, I was going to have to survive the uncomfortable possibility that she might win the first round. Claire Bennett watched the bolt cutter footage 3 times before she gave me the answer I didn't want. They may have a legitimate access argument. I stared at her. They cut my lock. That's a different issue. They drove onto my land at 4:38 in the morning and cut a steel padlock. Also a different issue. Claire turned her laptop toward me. The Silver Pines maintenance truck was frozen on screen, headlights washing across my private property sign. Her office smelled like coffee and printer toner. Rain tapped against the windows hard enough to blur the courthouse across the street. I had hired Claire because she specialized in property disputes. At that moment, I was starting to regret hiring someone who refused to tell me what I wanted to hear. She opened a thick folder. Silver Pines has records going back 23 years. She started laying them across the table. Road maintenance invoices, grading contracts, insurance documents, security agreements, board minutes, photographs. Then she unfolded an old subdivision plat. A yellow line crossed the eastern edge of Blackwater Ridge. Access corridor. I leaned forward. That isn't on my deed. Not in those words. Then what is it? That's what we need to determine. Claire tapped the map. Historical use matters. Recorded rights matter. The exact language matters. Right now, Rebecca has something she can point to. And I have a cut lock. Yes. She looked at me. But if you make this only about the road, you may be fighting on her strongest ground. 2 nights later, Rebecca approved Claire right. Silver Pines held its monthly meeting in the Cedar Crown clubhouse. I went alone. Claire's instructions were simple. Listen, don't argue. The room was packed. Nearly 90 homeowners sat beneath fluorescent lights while rainwater dripped from jackets onto the tile floor. Burnt coffee and lemon cleaner hung in the air. Rebecca stood beside a projector screen. Pink blazer, white blouse, black heels, black binder. Then Blackwater Ridge appeared behind her. My land was shaded green. The marina access route glowed yellow. Mr. Holloway purchased Blackwater Ridge less than a month ago, Rebecca said, and immediately attempted to obstruct an access corridor this community has maintained for 23 years. People turned toward me. Rebecca clicked the remote. An invoice appeared. Click. Road grading. Click. Marina maintenance. Click. A photograph from 2007 showing trucks using the same road. She had history. I had 6 weeks. Our homeowners have invested substantial resources maintaining reliable access to Cedar Crown. Another click. Another document. Then Rebecca looked directly at me. Unfortunately, purchasing property does not erase established rights simply because the new owner finds them inconvenient. That one landed. A few homeowners nodded. I felt heat climbing my neck. I wanted to stand up. Instead, I remembered Claire. Listen. So I listened while Rebecca spent another 15 minutes making me look like a wealthy outsider who had bought 8,000 acres and immediately decided to lock families away from their boats. When the meeting ended, I walked outside into cold rain. Claire was waiting beneath the covered entrance. Well, she has 23 years. Claire looked through the glass at Rebecca speaking with homeowners. Of what? Using the road. Exactly. I turned toward her. You're enjoying this distinction more than I am. She proved they use your road, Grant. Claire pointed through the rain toward Cedar Crown. Dock lights shimmered across the black water. She proved they maintain it. She may even prove some form of access right. I waited. Claire lowered her hand. But she didn't prove they own what's at the end of it. For a second, all I heard was rain striking the metal roof. What are you saying? I'm saying stop staring at the road. She nodded toward the marina. Find out who owns the ground underneath that. The next morning, I drove to the eastern edge of Blackwater Ridge. Rain had turned the trail to mud. I stopped where I had stopped on my first afternoon, walked into the trees, found the faded orange ribbon, then crouched and brushed wet leaves away. The iron pin was still there, rusted, cold, almost invisible. I photographed it and sent the image to Claire. Her reply came 30 seconds later. Don't move it. Then another message. I'm calling Walter Hayes. I looked through the trees toward the marina. For 3 weeks, Rebecca had kept forcing me to defend a road. That morning, I finally understood why that was the wrong fight. The real question was waiting at the other end. Walter Hayes found the second boundary marker because his shovel made a sound that didn't belong in mud. Clink. He stopped immediately. Hold that. His assistant froze beside the GPS receiver. Walter lowered himself onto one knee and scraped away dark soil with a gloved hand. Morning fog still clung to the shoreline, and the ground smelled like wet leaves, clay, and pine roots. Then the steel appeared. Old, rusted, solid. Walter looked at me. There's your monument. He was 63 and had been surveying property in the county longer than Silver Pines had existed. Gray hair beneath a faded canvas cap. Sun-browned hands. Mud permanently embedded around his work boots. Claire trusted him. Walter trusted measurements. For the next 2 days, we followed those measurements through Blackwater Ridge. 1 monument became 3. 3 became 6. Some were visible. Others had disappeared beneath decades of leaves. One sat beside an old fence line. Another was buried near the lake beneath a tangle of blackberry vines. Every time Walter found one, his assistant recorded the coordinates. Beep. Measure. Flag. Move. By the 3rd morning, the fluorescent ribbons were leading us towards Cedar Crown Marina. That was when Walter stopped talking. We stood near the edge of the paved parking lot, while boat trailers rattled past behind us. A fuel pump clicked on. Gasoline drifted through the cool air. Walter stared at his receiver. Walked 20 feet. Stopped. Checked again. Then he looked toward the decorative stone wall Silver Pines treated as its property boundary. That where they say the line is? That's what Rebecca's map shows. Walter scratched his jaw. No, one word. I waited. He walked toward the marina. I followed. He stopped near a landscaped strip beside the parking lot and drove a probe into the soil. Nothing. Moved 3 feet. Again. Nothing. The third time, metal answered. Clink. Walter cleared away gravel. Another iron monument emerged. I felt something tighten in my chest. How bad? For them. He stood and looked across the marina. Potentially pretty bad. That afternoon, Claire's conference table disappeared beneath maps. Walter laid the original deed description beside the later Silver Pines subdivision plat. Then he placed his certified field measurements over both. The lines didn't match. Not by inches. By hundreds of feet in places. The parking area crossed onto the Blackwater Ridge parcel. So did the fuel shed, the concrete boat ramp, and a significant portion of the land supporting Cedar Crown's shoreline facilities. I stared at the red boundary line. You're sure? Walter looked mildly offended. I don't certify guesses. Claire leaned over the maps. What caused the discrepancy? Looks like a later plat carried forward a reference point that doesn't match the original monuments and deed calls. He tapped the iron pin locations. These are consistent with each other. Claire nodded slowly. Then we traced title. I looked at her. So the marina is mine? No, the answer came fast. Don't say that yet. She pointed toward the survey. This tells us where the parcel boundary appears to be. It doesn't automatically tell us who owns every improvement sitting on it. That distinction mattered. Land, docks, buildings, access rights, different questions. For the first time, I understood how somebody could spend 23 years being confidently wrong without necessarily knowing it. That evening, I drove to Cedar Crown. Rebecca's white SUV was parked near the clubhouse. She saw me looking across the parking lot. Pink blazer, white blouse, black heels, black binder tucked under one arm. I hear you've been surveying around association property. I've been surveying Blackwater Ridge. You're creating unnecessary confusion. Maybe. She studied my face. What does that mean? It means I'm waiting for the paperwork. I walked back toward my truck. My phone rang before I reached it. Claire. I answered. We found the original shoreline agreement. I stopped. And it isn't a deed. Wind moved through the pines. Easement. No. Paper rustled on her end. It's titled Blackwater Recreational Landing License. I looked back at Cedar Crown. Fuel pumps. Clubhouse. Parking lot. Millions of dollars sitting beside the lake. What did the license give them? Limited recreational shoreline use. For the marina? Claire went quiet for half a second. For something much smaller than what's there now. I watched Rebecca disappear into the clubhouse. For weeks, she had acted like history proved ownership. Now we finally had the document that history actually started with. And it didn't say what she thought it said. Let her think you quit. Claire said it while sliding Rebecca's latest violation notice across her desk. I read the amount. $500. Interference with established community access. I looked up. You want me to pay this? No, answer it. No. Then what exactly am I supposed to do? Claire leaned back. Document everything. 3 days earlier, Walter's survey had changed the shape of the fight. Now the old recreational license was changing its meaning. The original agreement was narrow. A shoreline landing. A limited access path. Recreational use. No deed transferring the underlying parcel. Nothing resembling the sprawling facility Cedar Crown had become. But Claire didn't want me confronting Rebecca with it. Not yet. People get careful when they know you're watching, she said. Rebecca isn't careful. That turned out to be an understatement. I stopped chaining the road. Stopped arguing with security. Stopped answering Rebecca's calls. When letters arrived, I scanned them and filed them. When contractors crossed Blackwater Ridge, the trail cameras recorded them. Date, time, license plate, direction of travel. Rebecca interpreted all of it exactly the way Claire expected. As surrender. The following Monday, Silver Pines announced the Cedar Crown Waterfront Improvement Project. I found the glossy flyer in my mailbox. 12 additional slips. Expanded trailer parking. New shoreline lighting. Estimated investment. $640,000. I called Claire. She's expanding it. A pause. After the survey? She doesn't have Walter's certified report yet. Good. I frowned. Good. Let her keep talking. By Wednesday, construction stakes appeared near the marina parking area. Friday brought 2 dump trucks. Saturday morning, a paving contractor rolled across my property carrying equipment heavy enough to shake the glass in my kitchen windows. I stood on the porch with coffee and watched the truck disappear towards Cedar Crown. Then I checked the trail camera feed. Click. Saved. That became my routine. Truck. Click. Invoice. File. Email. Save. Letter. Scan. Rebecca had spent weeks teaching me that paperwork was power. I finally believed her. Then came the marina party. Silver Pines held it on a warm Saturday evening. Music traveled through the trees before sunset. I walked toward the eastern fence line and smelled charcoal, lake water, and fresh asphalt. Cedar Crown was packed. Pontoon boats filled the slips. Children ran between picnic tables. String lights hung from the clubhouse deck. And stretched across the railing was a blue and gold banner. Cedar Crown Marina, proudly owned by Silver Pines. I stopped, pulled out my phone. Click. Rebecca stood beneath the banner. Pink blazer over a white blouse. Black heels. Wine glass raised toward a crowd of homeowners. She spotted me beyond the fence. Her smile widened. To cooperation, she called. Several people laughed. I lifted my phone again. Click. Rebecca probably thought I was angry. I wasn't. Not anymore. Claire had taught me the difference between reacting and recording. On Monday, we began receiving documents through the legal process. Insurance declarations described Cedar Crown as an association-owned waterfront facility. Board minutes called it a Silver Pines capital asset. Improvement contracts used the same language. Then came the financial records. Launch fees, storage fees, special assessments, maintenance expenditures, expansion approvals. Rebecca's signature appeared beneath several of them. Claire spread the documents across her conference table. She keeps representing ownership. Maybe she believes it. Maybe. Claire tapped one signature. We don't need to guess what she believes. We need to establish what the records say. That mattered. This wasn't about proving Rebecca was secretly evil. It was about proving that confidence wasn't title. That evening, I returned to the ranch house and found another certified envelope waiting. Silver Pines. Another demand. Another threat of legal action. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Read it. Scanned it. Filed it. Then typed the shortest response I had sent Rebecca since this started. Received. I hit send. Outside, construction equipment rumbled somewhere beyond the trees. 6 weeks earlier, that sound would have made me furious. Now it sounded different. Every engine crossing my ranch carried a timestamp. Every dollar Silver Pines spent created another record. Every time Rebecca called Cedar Crown theirs, she put the claim in writing. She thought my silence meant she had finally beaten me. What she didn't understand was that I had stopped trying to win the argument. I was building the file that would end it. 4 pages. That was all it took to turn 23 years of confidence into a question nobody at Silver Pines wanted to answer. Claire laid the original agreement on her conference table Tuesday morning. The paper was yellow at the edges. The type was faded. An old county recording stamp sat crooked across the first page. Blackwater Recreational Landing License. Walter stood beside me with his certified survey rolled beneath one arm. Claire tapped the title. Notice what it doesn't say. Deed. Correct. Easement. Correct again. She turned the page. The agreement dated back to 1999, when Blackwater Ridge belonged to a man named Harold Beckett, and Silver Pines didn't yet exist in its current form. The language was plain. A limited access path. A small recreational landing. Non-commercial shoreline use. No transfer of title. No language granting ownership of the underlying parcel. I looked through the glass conference room wall as if Cedar Crown might somehow be visible from downtown. So they built a $3 million marina on a recreational license. Claire raised a finger. Careful. I waited. We know the current facility is dramatically larger than what this document describes. We know Walter's survey places significant portions of the marina footprint on the Blackwater Ridge parcel. We know Silver Pines repeatedly describes Cedar Crown as association-owned. She placed her hand on the agreement. What we don't do is skip from those facts to a legal conclusion before a judge gets involved. That was Claire. Even when the truth looked obvious, she wanted it wearing a case number. Walter unrolled his survey. The paper snapped flat. He pointed to the original landing area, a tiny rectangle near the shoreline. Then he traced the current marina footprint. Parking, fuel shed, ramp, clubhouse area. The difference was almost absurd. That, Walter said, tapping the small rectangle, is what the old document describes. His finger moved across the larger footprint. And that is what exists. Claire slid another folder toward me. We notify them today. The formal notice went out before noon. Boundary dispute. Title documentation. Certified survey. Demand to suspend further work within the disputed area. Preservation of contracts, communications, security footage, board records, and construction documents. Rebecca called at 12:43. I let Claire answer. Even from across the table, I could hear Rebecca's voice through the speaker. This is harassment. Claire remained calm. It's notice. You're attempting to interfere with HOA property. Then provide the deed establishing ownership of the parcel. Silence. Not long. Maybe 2 seconds. But long enough. Our counsel will respond. Please have them do that. Rebecca hung up. The contractors returned the next morning. 2 trucks. 1 excavator. Trail camera timestamp. 7:14 a.m. Click. Saved. By afternoon, orange construction stakes had been moved near the disputed parking area. Walter inspected them. They're continuing layout work. Claire stared toward the marina. After receiving notice, I could hear the change in her voice. We weren't collecting history anymore. We were recording what happened after everybody knew there was a dispute. Silver Pines attorney, Martin Cole, requested a meeting. It lasted 22 minutes. Rebecca arrived in her pink blazer, white blouse, black heels, and black binder. Martin sat beside her. Claire placed the license in front of him. He read the first page, then the second. Rebecca watched him. What? Martin didn't answer. He turned to the final page. Rebecca, where is the deed for the marina parcel? She stiffened. The association has controlled Cedar Crown for decades. That wasn't my question. The air conditioner hummed above us. Rebecca looked at me. You planned this. I bought a ranch. Claire closed her folder. And now we're trying to establish exactly what came with it. No agreement came out of that meeting. Construction activity continued the following day. That afternoon, Claire filed for temporary injunctive relief to stop further disputed expansion and preserve the property while the title and access claims were sorted out. No dramatic speech. No threat. Just exhibits. The deed chain. Walter's survey. The 1999 license. Trail camera timestamps. Construction records. Rebecca's written ownership claims. 2 days later, Claire called me before sunrise. I was standing on my porch, coffee steaming in the cold air. We got the temporary order. I looked toward the eastern trees. What happens now? Further work in the disputed area stops. Access will be handled under the court's terms while this gets sorted out. And if they ignore it, they won't get to pretend they weren't warned. I heard papers moving on her desk. County personnel will be there Thursday morning to assist with enforcement. What time? 6. I looked down at my coffee. Thursday, 6 in the morning. 3 sheriff's SUVs would arrive 12 minutes later. And Rebecca Langford was about to learn the difference between 23 years of saying something belonged to you and having the document that proved it. At 6:12 Thursday morning, the story finally caught up with itself. 3 sheriff's SUVs sat across the entrance to Cedar Crown Marina. Blue lights moved through the fog. Diesel exhaust hung over the wet pavement. And Rebecca Langford stood beneath those lights demanding that somebody arrest me. Ma'am, we're not here to debate who owns the marina, the deputy said. We're here to enforce a court order. Rebecca's black heels clicked sharply as she stepped toward him. This facility belongs to Silver Pines. You'll need to discuss the property dispute with your attorney. Then the deputy walked toward me. Mr. Holloway? I raised my coffee. That's me. You have the certified survey? In my truck. That was the moment Rebecca's expression changed. What survey? Claire arrived 2 minutes later. Walter followed in his pickup. By then, Silver Pines residents had started gathering outside the entrance. Trucks towing boats lined the road. People stood beside trailers in jackets and sweatpants, watching Rebecca pace across the parking lot in her pink blazer. Walter didn't argue with anybody. He unloaded his receiver. Tripod. Probe. Survey case. Then he started walking. Beep. Stop. Measure. Move. Rebecca followed him. What exactly are you doing? Walter kept his eyes on the receiver. Confirming a monument. This is association property. Walter stopped near parking space 17. He checked the screen. Moved 2 feet toward the landscaped edge. Checked again. Then pushed his probe into the gravel. Metal answered. Clink. Nobody spoke. Walter crouched and scraped away loose stone. The top of an iron pin appeared beneath the dirt. Rusted. Ugly. Barely wider than my thumb. Rebecca stared at it. That. Walter brushed the monument clean. Yes, ma'am. She laughed once. You're telling me that piece of rusty metal determines ownership of a $3 million marina? Walter stood. No, he reached into his case. That's why I brought the certified survey. Claire almost smiled. We moved to the covered area beside the clubhouse. The deputy remained nearby while Claire laid the documents across a table. My deed chain. Walter's survey. The 1999 recreational license. The temporary order. Rebecca's attorney, Martin Cole, arrived while she was reading the first page. He came fast across the parking lot, tie crooked, jacket unbuttoned. Rebecca, tell them. Martin looked at the documents. Tell them this is HOA property. He didn't. Instead, he picked up the license. Read the title. Turn the page. Then looked at Walter's survey. Rebecca's voice dropped. Martin. He finally looked at her. Where is the deed? Her face hardened. We have 23 years of control. I asked for the deed. We maintained the road. Rebecca. We built this facility. Martin lowered the document. That still isn't a deed. Behind us, somebody whispered. Then another voice. Thomas Keene, one of the Silver Pines board members, stepped closer. You told us the association owned this parcel. Rebecca turned. We do. Thomas pointed at Claire's documents. Then show us. Rebecca looked at me. That was the first time she seemed to understand what had actually happened. For 6 weeks, she thought I was trying to prove she had no right to use my road. I wasn't. I had been trying to establish what rights Silver Pines actually possessed at the end of it. Claire opened another folder. Insurance declarations. Capital improvement approvals. Expansion contracts. Board minutes. Again and again, Cedar Crown appeared as association-owned property. Thomas picked up one document. Then another. How much money did we put into this? Rebecca reached for the folder. Those are internal records. Thomas pulled it away. I'm on the board. The crowd behind him went quiet. Claire didn't accuse Rebecca of stealing anything. She didn't need theatrics. She simply pointed to the language. This is what the association represented in its records. The title and boundary questions now have to be resolved through the legal process. Rebecca turned toward me. You're going to destroy this marina over a technicality? I looked past her. Families stood beside their boats. Kids waited inside trucks. None of them had cut my lock. None of them had written the assessment. No, I looked back at Rebecca. I never wanted your marina. She frowned. Then what do you want? I pointed toward the iron monument beside parking space 17. My boundary. The wind moved across Blackwater Lake. A halyard tapped against a mast. Clink, clink, clink. Rebecca looked down at the survey again. This marina belongs to Silver Pines. I held her gaze. Then show me the deed. She said nothing. And for the first time in 23 years, neither did the paperwork. 5 months later, the last thing Rebecca Langford left at Cedar Crown Marina was 4 empty bolt holes in a stone column. The impact driver whined. Whir. Clack. A worker removed the final screw, and the blue and gold Silver Pines private marina sign tilted forward into his hands. I stood beside my truck watching it come down. No deputies. No shouting. No Rebecca. Just cool morning air, sunlight on Blackwater Lake, and the smell of fresh-cut grass drifting across the parking lot. Justice, I learned, usually sounds less like a courtroom gavel than a power tool. The title dispute had taken months to unwind. Walter's certified survey held. The deed chain confirmed Blackwater Ridge's boundary. The 1999 license confirmed something equally important. Silver Pines had historical permission connected to shoreline recreation, but not the ownership interest Rebecca had repeatedly claimed. The marina improvements created their own legal questions. So Claire handled them the way she handled everything. One document at a time. Silver Pines hired independent counsel. Then an outside accountant reviewed the marina expenditures, special assessments, insurance declarations, and expansion approvals. Rebecca's problem wasn't that she had maintained a marina. It was that she had spoken with certainty where the records demanded questions. The board called a special meeting. Rebecca resigned before the scheduled removal vote. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. Thomas Keene became interim board president. A week later, he drove to Blackwater Ridge alone. No binder. No security patrol. Just jeans, work boots, and a folder under his arm. We want to keep Cedar Crown open. We stood beside the same dirt road where my padlock had been cut. I looked toward the lake. I know. He seemed surprised. You're willing to discuss access? I was always willing to discuss access. Thomas glanced down at the road. Rebecca said you wanted the marina shut down. Rebecca said a lot of things. That was the beginning of the settlement. Not revenge. A boundary. Claire drafted a recorded agreement defining exactly where Silver Pines members could travel, what areas they could use, who maintained the access road, and what required written approval. No imaginary HOA jurisdiction over Blackwater Ridge. No surprise assessments. No unauthorized patrols. No expansion beyond agreed boundaries. And nobody touched my gates without permission. Thomas read that last provision and almost smiled. Fair enough. The marina reopened under the new arrangement. The first Saturday, I stood near the ranch fence while families hauled boats toward the lake. A little boy waved from the passenger seat of a pickup. I waved back. Those people had never been my enemy. That mattered. 2 weeks later, I replaced the old sign near the eastern road. Blackwater Ridge. Private property. Access by recorded agreement only. I set the posts myself. Measured twice. Leveled them. Poured concrete. 22 years in construction had taught me something Rebecca never understood. If the foundation is wrong, everything above it eventually tells on you. When I finished, I noticed a faded orange ribbon near the trees. I walked over. There it was. The first iron monument. The one I had photographed less than 2 hours after buying the ranch. I crouched and brushed pine needles away. Rust stained my fingertips. That piece of steel had been sitting there while roads were graded, docks were expanded, assessments were collected, and board members repeated the same assumption until everybody treated it like fact. 23 years of ignoring a boundary hadn't moved it an inch. That evening, I sat on the ranch porch as the sun dropped behind Blackwater Lake. A boat engine started beyond the trees. Months earlier, that sound had made me wonder who was crossing my property. Now I knew. I knew the route. I knew the agreement. I knew exactly where their rights ended and mine began. Rebecca had tried to win by speaking louder. I won by measuring, documenting, waiting, and asking one question she could never answer. Where is the deed? The last sunlight caught the new sign near the road. Below it, almost hidden beneath the grass, the rusted iron pin remained exactly where it had always been. Justice didn't need to shout. It just needed the right line on the right piece of paper.